And now, to prepare our hearts and our minds for the upcoming service, we're actually going to have an offering song that's going to be played. So this is really to get us in the mode spiritually to listen to the message. So at this time, I'd ask you to reflect on this and, prepare your hearts and minds for the upcoming sermon.
Savior, I come, quiet my soul. Remember, redemption's hill, where your blood was spilled for my ransom. Everything I once held dear, I counted all as lost. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross. You were as I, tempted and tried. The Word became flesh, bore my sin and death. Now you're risen. Everything I once held dear, I counted all as lost. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross. To your heart, lead me to your heart, lead me to your heart, lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross.
So beautiful, right? Incredible pictures, and appreciate you putting that together for us. So I'd like to introduce our upcoming sermon giver today. As you know, Pastor Adonia is here, and she's going to be speaking today a little bit more around living in the present. And when you think about what it means to live in the present, people often say, smell the roses, or take 10 deep breaths, or, be very purposeful and intentional about making the most of this moment. But what Pastor Donia is going to be speaking about is she's going to be adding a layer onto that. How do you live in the present but have a vision for the future? How do you make the most of the present by connecting it to your dreams and to your goals and to where you want to go in the future? And I think our founder, Reverend Sung Myung Moon, is a master at that. He's incredible about being so present and being so clear when he was here on this earth for that greater vision and for that greater cause. To be successful in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Pastor Donia to speak about that this morning. Let's welcome her up.
Good morning, everyone. That video was good, isn't it? Okay. So as you can see, the title of today's service is to let the future guide your moment. But as you know, this past week was the 5th anniversary of Reverend Moon's, our true father's, passing. I was just thinking about it. 2 years ago at this time, I was in Korea. I was 5 months pregnant, and I went to Korea to celebrate the 3rd anniversary of Father's passing. And that was a big deal. In Korean culture, when someone passes away, you spend 3 years mourning that person. You spend 3 years offering dedication for that person. And wow, when I think about it, those 3 years were a tough 3 years for us, weren't they? And even more so for a true mother. It was interesting watching that the video from the weekly update and seeing True Mother place the flower on the pile of flowers. And I remember doing that 2 years ago. We all had a chance to go up. Everybody in the whole entire stadium, like 10,000 of us, were given a flower to go up and show our love to True Father. So, but I remember the day after the 3rd anniversary of Father's passing. Fortunately, I wasn't a national leader or a regional leader, but I was a little local leader who got to tag along with the big guys. And we got to meet with True Mother the next day. And the next day, True Mother was powerful. She looked so much lighter. She looked so much brighter. And I just felt this incredible power emanating from her that was like, now we are going forward. We did it. We mourned Father. We offered our dedication. And now we're taking the next step. So I was really happy that I could be there to see that in person. And it really left a mark on me, because I think a lot of times, in the past, True Mother has been sitting next to Father, or she's been kind of behind the scenes. But to see her really step forward that day and say, we are going to do this, was incredible. So now every year we get to celebrate Father's whole life. It's a celebration now. We get to celebrate the completion of his life on earth. But how do you celebrate Father's life in one Sunday service? I was thinking, what should I do? Should I give a timeline of Father's life? Should I talk about all the things he did? Should I talk about his relationship with God? Should I talk about his heart for the people of the world? And within every one of those topics, there's something you could talk about for, a whole day. So what can you fit in a 30-minute message on a Sunday morning? Then I realized, this is why True Mother spends a whole week celebrating True Father's life in Korea, because you really need a whole week to celebrate Father's life. But I just want to share a little story with you of something that happened this week that kind of helped me to zero in on one little aspect of Father to share with you. So it was maybe 3 days ago or so, we were having dinner together, and we always try to have a family dinner. I feel like whatever is going on crazy in our life, I want to all sit down. I want to all pray before dinner, and I want to share that time together. And I usually love the kind of conversation that comes out of that, kids asking questions. That seems like usually during dinners when they ask these questions. What was it, Mike, they asked the other day? I don't know. They asked things like, what is heaven? Or, like, and I'm like, oh, let me think about that, But this particular day, Nathan was talking across the table to Aiden, and he was like, so-and-so is crushing on so-and-so. And I was like, wait a second, what? And the immediate thing I wanted to say was like, stop that. Why are you talking about that? It's so not important. What are you doing? But I held myself back because I realized that I don't want to make him feel that he's bad for talking about it. But my heart as a parent is, I'm just so sad that this is part of their experience in school or in life, being a 7-year-old. I don't want that to even be a topic that's in his head and something that he's sharing about with somebody else, So I really had to wait, step back, take a moment. What's going on here? And I didn't even know what to say at first, so I just started asking him some questions like, so Nathan, what do you think about that? Or what do you think a crush is? Or and I really kind of had to gather myself because I just haven't really had this particular conversation with my kids yet. Eventually, I had to identify why I had such a strong feeling about it. And it's not because I'm worried that, 7-year-olds are dating and in a serious relationship and having a sexual relationship, because they're not, right? What he's talking about is probably somebody, it's what a lot of people call puppy love, or, oh, isn't that cute? They say they like each other, and everybody knows it's not serious. And from a snapshot's perspective, if you're just looking at that moment, face value, it's not a big deal, right? It's not going to impact the rest, they're not thinking about the impact on the rest of their life. They're not doing anything wrong. But from a much larger perspective, looking at the course of somebody's life, how they develop, how we learn proper relationships, how to create true love in relationships, it's very different. I'm thinking about my kids' future, how I want them to experience joy in their future families. And so from this perspective, then what does a nonchalant, romantic relationship as a 7-year-old mean? From that perspective, it's a small step, but it is a first step. It's a first step to learning how you relate to the opposite sex. It's a first step in learning what commitment is or isn't. I asked Nathan what he thought a crush was, because I was trying to think of something to say. And he said, well, it's when you love somebody. I felt like I wanted to punch whoever gave him that idea. Where did you hear that? But this first concept of what love is will lead to a second step. And a second step will lead to a third step. And the third step you take, you're on a trajectory. You're on a path going in a certain direction. And unless something different comes in to guide you another way, show you something better, that's the path you continue to go on. I didn't state this so eloquently when I was talking to them. I really had to digest it. So I don't know how good of a job I did conveying that to my kids, but one way or another, I think they got the idea that this was something, it meant something to me, And it's not as funny as they thought it was. So the big difference here in looking at this one small experience, this little moment in time, is your perspective on it, and the vision for everything surrounding it. If you think of an example of, I was listening on a podcast or something about race car drivers, and how when you're driving a race car, you're going so fast. And if you only look at the road right in front of you, you're going to crash. There's no way you can take the curves, go where you need to go when you're looking at the road right in front of you. When you're racing a car, you're looking all the way ahead and you're looking around the curve to where you're going, and you're letting that guide how your body responds to where you want to go. Also, I think of it as like maybe you're in college, or maybe you're in high school, you're studying, and let's say this one particular day, you don't have any homework. Oh my gosh, isn't that one of the best feelings? Like, I don't have any homework. Yes, I can go out with my friends. I can make a nice meal. I could binge on my favorite show. It's like all the opportunities are so amazing. And looking at from just that one day, that's what it can feel like. But let's say next Friday, there's a really big paper due. And this is 50% of your grade for the semester. And it's a really important paper. So looking from that perspective, taking into consideration your week, and not only your week, but your whole semester, your whole school experience, what is maybe a better thing to do with that little bit of free time that cropped up in your week? It's the difference that perspective can make. So I can think of no better example than of being able to see the big vision, seeing the big picture, and then living it out in daily life. I can think of no better example than our true Father and our true parents. I think it's in his autobiography, True Father talks about that when he was small, his mother called him Tiny Eyes, something like that, and how and he was really into how the features that we have indicate things in our character, right? So if you have the big forehead, it means this, and if you have big ears, it means this. And for him, he had small, beady eyes, and he said that meant that he could focus far out into the future, right? And he could see it so clearly. I have a quote. These are a couple quotes from Father. Oh, I meant to show this earlier. This is from the first anniversary, or the Li Sanghua. All 240 million Americans are pursuing lives of laughter. But imagine one man in their midst who, instead of joining the crowd, is worrying about the grim future of America and the generations to come, toiling in tears and sorrow to bring the nation back to its righteous path. Who is more historical, in your opinion? I think we know who he's talking about there. This is another one. Perfection and happiness cannot be derived only in the present moment. Does the present constitute cause and effect? Suppose you are a painter and you are working on a portrait which consists only of the face of a beautiful woman. She represents only the present, the contemporary world, and there is no background or futuristic mystery to her portrait. Could that one flat face be a masterpiece? If we add a background of sky and clouds, it will add depth to the picture and portray a three-dimensional world. A group of clouds can contain all kinds of abstract images. And when the blue sky is in the background, it can express all kinds of ideas about the future. If the lady is holding a baby bird in her hand, which the mother bird is trying to feed. And the picture tells a story of a certain relationship of heart. In order to truly make this picture a masterpiece, there must be depth, a past, a present, and a future. It must depict 3 different generations. So I like this because it really shows how, although all we have is the present moment, right? The past is done. The past is gone. What's it called? The past, yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. God gave us today, and that is why it's called the present, right? That's all we have. We have this moment. But without putting it into context of history and where we're going in the future, how do we really know what to do in the moment? How do we really know how to live in the present? So Father was such a visionary, looking so far ahead, thinking about things that were going to happen and things that needed to happen to prevent problems. And I feel like so many people we couldn't even grasp why he was talking about this. You know, I remember when Father was talking about the Peace Road and how he wanted to build a bridge or a tunnel between Alaska and Russia, and then create a peace road that would go connecting all the continents. And we all said, that sounds amazing, Father, but how could that ever happen? But now I see something on Facebook like every week of different plans and like projections of ideas of how we could interconnect the world through highways and things. And it's like, Father already knew this needed to happen. He was just talking about it before we could grasp it. Another thing, I didn't know this, but Mike's dad talked about this before, is that back when, we were so focused on communism for a while. I know my parents were in CAUSA and Victory Over Communism. And in that moment, we were focusing so much on that. But at that time, Father said, this is already won. What we've done here is already going to topple the Berlin Wall. This is already won. What's going to be happening next is there's going to be radical extremists from the Middle East. That's what I'm really worried about. Tomorrow is the anniversary of September 11th. And I'm sure all of you who were alive at the time remember where you were at that time. And I was in marching band, practicing outside, and it was the very beginning of the school day. So as the day went on, we had these brand new TVs. We'd never had such a thing in my school before, but giving the news, and it started to come out that the people who they suspected had flown the planes into the trade towers were radical Muslims. And in my mind, I was like, huh? I'd never even heard of such a thing before. Maybe I was just like, maybe it's because I was only like 15. But for me, I was like, what? Why would they do that? Before September 11th, it wasn't really in our minds that these kind of things would happen and that they would continue to happen. But Father talked about it. He knew. And he was trying to make relationships with Muslim leaders. He was doing the Million Man March and Louis Farrakhan and trying to create loving, serving relationships to the Muslim world to prevent these kind of things from happening. So only in hindsight do I realize, Father really knows. He really knows what he's talking about, and he knows it way before I do. So the things that he was talking about 40 years ago or 20 years ago are now relevant issues that everybody talks about. So Father and True Mother, have this huge vision. They're thinking generations into the future. I remember when we transitioned from saying Manse to Okmanse, right? And Manse means like victory for 1,000 years, and Okmanse means victory for 10,000 years. And I was like, does it really make a difference to how many thousands of years? But to True Father it did, because he's not thinking 1,000 years ahead, he's thinking 10,000 years ahead. So he's thinking about the future, and he's thinking about the reality of the world, and that if nothing changes and the world continues as it's going, where will we be? And what could he do to alter the direction of history? So this is why I think Father was so skilled at living in the moment, because he knew that what he did right now, the conditions that he made while he was fishing, the attitude he had when he was being persecuted, could alter in some way the direction of history. So Father lived each moment to the fullest. He was so aware of what he was doing. I was just watching that video with all those photos, that from Father's life from when he was a young man until he was older, and I thought, man, each one of those snapshots, those are just a moment, right? Each one of those was a single moment that he was present in. But I feel like I took pictures of Father when I was on STF and in Korea, and I feel like every picture conveyed Father's heart in some way. It was his expression to people. It was his devotion to God. It was his love for his wife. It was like there was never a moment when Father was just spacing out and like, His whole life, each moment in his life, was directed for a purpose. So I think that sometimes it's difficult to see ourselves as being that kind of a person, being a historical person. And maybe not everybody in the world is, but everybody in the world can be. People, like Clara was saying, people often say, live in the moment, carpe diem, stop and smell the roses, live in the moment. And I get it. That's something that I feel like I need to do more of. But sometimes we're so focused on the here and the now. We kind of glorify this moment. I think that's kind of the cultural thing right now is live for the moment. You only live once, YOLO, right? For the moment. But it doesn't necessarily have a purpose. So something that I think I'm learning from Father, especially as Mike and I actually are pastoring, and I feel like we're really trying to create a vision, and I realize that when you have a vision, then you need to act on it, otherwise it never gets there, right? And in order to act on it, I have to be aware of my vision in the moment so I can make the right decision in the moment. But what I'm learning from Father is that when we are aware of God, not just our concept of God, if we're aware of the reality of God in our life, when we are aware of the kind of world that we were created to live in, like Father was saying, the past, right? We knew what God's intention for us was, and we're aware of that. And when we're aware of the reality of the abundance of God's love, when we're aware of where we came from and where we are going, that's when we can live fully, richly, and purposefully in the moment. So, I don't know where you're at this week. I feel like that this is something that it really takes time. It really takes practice. I was at our small groups over in Aurora on Monday, and something we were talking about was habits. We used Father's words, and we were discovering, how do you create a good habit? Or how do you get rid of a bad habit? And I was really challenged by that because, gosh darn it, it's not easy. We can get inspired about something in the moment, and we start to do it. But I know very few people who do something like cold turkey. There are those people, quit drinking cold turkey, quit coffee cold turkey, and never pick it up again. But I think it's much more common that we slip up, that we miss the mark sometimes. And in that moment, it's very easy to feel like a failure. It's very easy to get discouraged and think, I was inspired, I gave it all, but I still messed up. How could I try again, especially feeling deflated or feeling discouraged. I was sharing about how this past, basically since the beginning of the year, one of my goals is to create a new habit of getting up earlier in the morning. Because I'm not a morning person, but I really hate being woken up by my kids. It's the worst. To be trying to sleep, you got to bed late last night, the baby woke up a couple times, and you're exhausted, and then the kid comes up, Mom, I need breakfast. Mom, he said this, and this. Like, that's the worst way to wake up. So my goal is to get up before the kids. I'm going to wake them up. I'll do it nicely, but I don't want my day to start off being controlled by the kids and feeling like I'm behind. So my goal this year was to get up before the kids. And I started off, actually, for 1 month, I did a really good job. But then, things happened. The kids got sick, I got sick, and it kind of all went out the window. And it was really hard to start again. It was really hard to try again, to make the determination to get up early, knowing that I had already failed. But I did. A few weeks later, failed again. But since the beginning of the year until now, I've made progress. And I will probably still fail again. But I realize that we just have to know that God believes in us. We just have to know that God's purpose for us is something greater than where we're at. And God will never give us a challenge that we can't deal with. So when it comes to living in the moment, I know it's hard. We don't always think about it every day, but I would say the best catalyst for doing that is to remember where we came from, remember where we're going. Bring it into a reality in our heart, not just a concept. Oh yeah, God created the world and he wanted to live as a happy family, but we fell, and so it's restoration. You can say the exact same things, but say it like this: God created me. God created Adam and Eve, and he wants for me what he wanted for Adam and Eve. He wants me to experience that in my life. I'm not there. Fall happened. And therefore it's difficult. There is restoration. I do have to struggle sometimes. I do fail sometimes. But that's growth. But look at what God has for all of us. And I think that when we kind of bring it to our heart like that, and we make it a reality for us, somehow we find the power to guide our moment-to-moment daily life. And I'm so grateful for our true Father. So grateful for our true parents. For this one aspect that I could talk about today that I feel like they totally epitomized. So I encourage you to think about that this week. Also reflect on his life. Maybe there's something else in Father's life that just totally resonates with you. But let's give our love, let's give our honor, and let's strive to become the real true children of our true parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you sincerely, Pastor Donia, for not only coming up and sharing your insights and your thoughts and your wisdom, but always making it personal and keeping it light, but so true to our own identities and our own path. And I think we all have some deep thinking and reflection to do this week. So at this time, we're going to have our wonderful welcome team in the back. They're going to be walking forward in a couple minutes, but we're going to be having a reflection time for a couple minutes where we'd like you all to think a little bit more about the sermon and how you'd like to actionize it this week. And then in a couple minutes, the welcome team will walk down the aisle and you'll have the chance to give your tithe into the basket, and then we'll close it out with prayer. So please join me in having a couple minutes of reflection and then tithing. Now we're going to transition to a couple of local announcements. As we saw, there was a recent Cosmic Blessing and Sungwa Festival in honor of the 5th year anniversary of the passing of our founder, Reverend Sung Myung Moon. And so additionally, we're going to be doing something locally today, starting at 12:30. There's going to be a couple of local testimonies where our own members are going to be sharing about their experiences with our founder, specifically Jim and Linda Howell, Cynthia Hiramitsu, Dr. Hendrick, Catherine Ichinohe, Jim Chimes, Elise Fleischer, and many, many more. So if you'd like to add, a personal aspect to, to this momentous event, we're going to be having here in the chapel at 12:30 something local in terms of understanding and sharing. So that'll be testimonies and, sorry, Mike. Thank you. At this time, we're going to excuse the Sunday school kids before we go into the rest of the announcements. Thank you for the reminder, Mike. So all Sunday school in Ilsham, it's now your time to transition. Thank you for your patience, and we're so thrilled to have you for our beginning portion of our program. So our second announcement today on the local level is that we have an upcoming youth service on September 24th. Raise your hands if you've been to a youth service. All right, we have about half the people, so the other half, I hope to see you on the 24th because it's a lot of fun. We have all of the youth, and although I might look like the youth, we're talking about even younger than I am. And there's going to be, 12 and 13-year-olds giving the sermon, being the MC. So let's do our part in coming out and supporting them to make this a success. So that's going to be on September the 24th. Our third announcement here is that we're celebrating 3 years of our pastorship, who've done such an incredible job to commemorate their 3rd year anniversary. So let's give them a round of applause. So on October 1st, there's going to be a special service where they're going to be giving a report back to you in terms of what they've done in their past 3 years and their vision to come in the future. And as we saw nationally, there's so many exciting things going on, but we wanted to make sure that this message was shared. Women's Federation for World Peace is having their annual leadership retreat, and it's from October 12th to the 14th, and the content theme is Igniting a Culture of Heart. And the cost is $165 per person, but that includes the retreat cost, meals, and it's for anybody 18 and over. So any young lady or man who'd like to attend, they're open to anybody who'd like to attend. It's going to be at the IPEC Center in Las Vegas. And additionally, all the meals and sessions are included in the cost. And WFWP's strength and power comes from intergenerational collaboration. And so they're very focused on making sure that all different ages and people from walks of life do attend. So if you know of anybody, if you can attend, please make sure to share the message so that we can make this event a success. As done on a weekly basis, we have our wonderful Reverend Watente, who speaks every first and third Sunday from 9 to 10 p.m., and he specifically speaks about divine principle study on the 2nd and the 4th right here in the French Chapel. So if you'd like to hear a little bit more with an English translation, please come out to hear our wonderful Reverend Watente. And then our last announcement on the local level is that next week the Mahardy family is cooking, and we also need volunteers for future weeks for cooking. So if you have the cooking bug in you and you want to give back, this is your opportunity. We do need some volunteers, so talk to Pastor Mike and Pastor Donia if you're interested in giving back. So those are all of our announcements.